I was listening to a couple online courses lately on how to speak to people as a leader, particularly on how to have difficult conversations. I just like to see what other people are doing in their courses. I was disappointed in half of them because even though they were advertised as sharing some of the best techniques of leadership communication today, I felt 50% of it was old style. What do I mean by old style? Stay tuned and I'll share about it. And what's new? And what's a winning style of leading people and having difficult conversations in a way that makes everyone feel better about them? I'll give you some specifics of how you can do this. This is Luci Gabel, leadership coach, entrepreneur, speaker, author, and professor at the George Washington University School of Medicine. Welcome to my podcast, Leadership, Life, Health, and Happiness. To sum it up, what I'm calling new leadership isn't really that new. Books and research about this kind of leadership have been around for over 50 years. It's just that leadership in itself has maintained a similar kind of style for the last few hundreds, if not thousands of years. It's time for leadership to be different, don't you think? What is the new leadership? Well, in a couple of sentences, this new leadership is being authentic. That means being yourself, being honest, and being open. Giving people a chance to understand who you are and what you need, and listening to find out who people are and what they need so you can help them do what they need to do. And for a variety of reasons, that comes back around. Research shows that when you're this kind of leader, the people you're leading end up becoming a much higher functioning team, which benefits you, your organization, your cause, or your family unit, whatever kind of team you're leading. So let me say this again. Being yourself, being honest and authentic, being open, giving people a chance to understand who you are and what you need, and listening to find out who they are and what they need so you can help them do what they need to do. Does that sound scary to you? It does to a lot of people. It sounded scary to me when I was in my leadership roles. But psychological research and business research is showing that this style of leadership is more effective. And in fact, when we adopt this new kind of leadership, people are much happier, enjoy the work they do, are more energized and intrinsically motivated, feel more satisfied doing what they do with you, and are likely to stick with you for longer. I've coached people in doing this. I've seen it work from corporate leadership to family leadership and all kinds of leadership in between. I've also witnessed it work in my own career. There are names for it: innovative leadership, people-centric leadership. My own name is Leadership 3.0 or New Leadership. On the other hand, command control leadership is the type where the leader is the ruler, the maker of the law, the authority on all things. No questions are asked. No one else's opinion is needed or wanted. Nothing is up for debate. And if things don't go as planned, people get punished. It's the old style of leadership. Command control leadership is still needed in certain situations. It's when decisions need to be made quickly and efficiently, and someone needs to be the decision maker at the top so everyone else can follow and do what's needed immediately. These situations are in places like military, emergency medical systems, fire department, police, and yet, even in places where command control leadership works in specific scenarios, there are also times where leaders here can implement the new kind of leadership and be even more successful than before. And that's been written about too. So, can you adopt different kinds of leadership styles for different situations? You bet. And your people will get to know you and all of your styles. You may have already heard a lot of theory about the kind of leadership that's best, but putting theory into practice is completely different. If this isn't something you've been doing, it can be really hard to even try this new style. And you're not alone. When we get to talking about this subject in my workshops, attendees inevitably start asking the question that you might be thinking right now. How do I keep my authority if I'm not a command and control leader? This is a big subject, so I'm only going to talk about one aspect today, which is communicating difficult or negative information in this new leadership style. For clarification, when I say difficult conversation, I mean you have to share something that's not 100% positive. It could be anywhere from constructive criticism to having to let someone go. Difficult means different things to different people. But let's just say it makes you uncomfortable, and it also does so for the person you're speaking with. If we get down to it, most people use command control when we don't know how else to, quote unquote, discipline people or keep them doing what they need to be doing. When we don't know how to have the difficult conversations, we put a mask on and pretend we're someone else. We put a shield up and lay down the law and walk away without ever turning back and looking to see the damage in our wake. The practices I'll share here come from my reading the research, years of taking a variety of different classes, and also my personal experiences. So that way I'm going to add my own twist onto this much discussed subject. And you may be thinking, okay, you say books and research, but what kind of experience are we talking about? Well, I have experience doing it wrong and doing it right. My leadership experience started out in my 20s. I got a job in Seoul, South Korea as a director of a project for the MWR division of the U.S. Department of Defense, setting up a facility that would serve the entire armed forces in Asia. It was a high-profile position, and I represented our facility to the top-ranking officials who came to Asia from the United States. Picture this. I was in my 20s running a department of 90 professionals, many of them older and more experienced than me. There were people from different backgrounds and cultures and countries. My job was embedded within the Department of Defense, which is a completely new culture for me, and I was in a completely different country, which was also another completely new culture. It was baptism by fire, and there were a lot of adjustments for me to make. And I was not a born leader. I was not born into a family of leaders. I was not trained in leadership. And you know what? Most people aren't. It was hard, and it was scary, and I also felt alone. But that was when I started on my quest to figure out how to be a leader. I worked to learn from others around me, but ultimately, the military style of leadership wasn't something that suited me as a person. I tried different leadership styles in that position, but I never felt I really got it down. I moved on to other leadership positions in private companies. I had a few of my own businesses, and I had a venture capitalist funded startup company where I was the managing partner. For most of this time, I was experimenting with what kind of leadership style felt right for me and was effective. I never found any one person who I wanted to emulate. I did gain some valuable insights from people along the way, along with those books and classes I mentioned. And when it came to putting theory into action, there was a lot of trial and error. Ultimately, there were two things that got me to being the kind of leader I was finally proud of being and that fit me well. The first was learning more about myself and becoming really comfortable with who I am and what I stand for, and being able to stand by myself when things got hard. The second was learning how to be a coach. After 50 years of research, Gallup found people want a leader who can coach them to the next level. This is one of the things that most people want when they're at a job and actually helps them to be intrinsically motivated when they have a coach as a leader. When I say coach, I definitely don't mean commander or ruler or tyrant or an enforcer. Being a coach is also not being a boss or a teacher. I'll share more about this distinction as we go along in the podcast. But what I'm saying here is to have difficult conversations, you'll have an easier and more successful time at it if you know yourself and bring your whole self into the conversation, and if you take the position of a coach. Now let's get out of the theory and into actionable pieces of this. I'll give you some specifics of how you can do this. And it involves some pre-planning and pre-thinking. Actually, that's where most of the work is before you have the conversation. Because when it comes to saying something that feels difficult for you, when you put some thought into it before actually saying it, you can do it in the best way possible. And you can even make the difficulty go away. So let's get into the specifics. I have 6 specific things for you to do that can make difficult conversations go smoother and be easier. 3 involve thinking, and 3 involve doing. First, the thinking part. 1, explore how you feel. You may be angry or sad, frustrated, fearful, or a mixture. You need to take all of the emotions and feel them out before having that conversation. Find a quiet place or a quiet walk or swim or something that takes you away from everything and find out what you're really feeling about it and be completely honest with yourself. And decide if there are any of these emotions that are appropriate for you to share during the conversation. 2, imagine best case scenarios. Imagine yourself having this conversation and having it come across in the best way possible. Ask yourself, what's a really good outcome that might happen as a result of this? And think way outside the box. Allow yourself to daydream. In your daydream, nothing is ruled out. Go to all of the possibilities of best case scenarios. You'll see how well this works when you try it. But the bottom line is, you might decide that some of these best case scenarios are actually possible outcomes. And when we focus on the positive outcomes, we're more likely to see opportunities for them. So this is a really important piece. 3, summon your higher self. Imagine if you were being your higher self, your best self in this conversation, the person you aspire to be. How would you be in this conversation? That means, what is the feeling you give off? What is the mood you're coming in with? What is the mood you're leaving them with? What's the general feeling of your words? Imagine yourself standing or sitting with the other person, and you are being that person you admire and want to be. When you put in the mental energy like this beforehand, you have the highest probability of your conversation coming out as well as it possibly can, and for you to feel as good as you can about yourself after you're done. Now let's talk about 3 specific ways to actually have the conversation when you have it. 1, start with a compliment, a real one, not just something fluffy. There are always things you can find that are positive that the other person is doing. Even better, make it something that relates to the topic of the conversation you're about to have. It's a great way to open up the lines of communication and help everyone get into a good feeling place, you included. You'll see, when you start from a positive place, the tone of the conversation immediately improves, and it gives everything else a chance to go well. 2, ask a question, a logical, open-ended question about what's going on with them in the situation you're about to discuss. Find out as much as you can from their point of view and from their side of the story, so you aren't being a one-way talker or wasting your time addressing a situation that, in their mind, may not have even happened. You'll find out a lot by listening, and you may even realize you don't have to say as much as you thought. Also, asking questions warms everyone up to dialogue. Not to mention, After you've asked a question and listened to someone, it opens them up to listening to you next. The important thing is to keep this balanced kind of conversation going all the way through. Make sure you both have equal time to talk and make sure you do your share of listening. You might even feel sometimes like you want to jump in when they're talking because your energy might be pretty high. So you're going to want to breathe deeply and just listen to what they have to say, give them time to get it all out, give yourself some time to pause, and even allow there to be some pauses in the conversation. It helps to keep the energy level down a notch so that the stress levels on both of your sides aren't cruising higher and higher. The third and final point is, before having the conversation, make a bullet list of things you want to say, keeping all of my last 5 points in mind. Once you have your bullets, read them to yourself and imagine this conversation taking place. And here's the twist on this. When you're reading your conversation and your bullet list the final time, and you're imagining this conversation going on, put yourself in the other person's position. Imagine yourself hearing someone else saying your words to you. How would you feel? Does it make you feel like you would like them to feel? Do you come across as the higher self you aspire to be? If not, think about how you can say it differently. Work your words until they feel right for you. And as you work your words to make it better, be as honest and authentic as possible. Do you feel sorry about the fact that you have to tell them something? Do you feel let down by them because they promised something and didn't deliver? Do you feel blindsided by something that happened? Tell them. When we open up to the human side of things and encourage others to also, we have better communication. We make better connection, and we'll have better feelings about each other all around. If you have to say something difficult, it doesn't mean people will always like what you have to say, but they can like and respect that you are honest and kind, and you can have the best chance of things turning out for the best that way. Getting good at having difficult conversations takes a little bit of time. It doesn't come easily, and for most people, it doesn't come naturally. But it definitely gets better with practice. I can also tell you from experience that it really helps to have a coach who can guide and support you when you're going through making changes like this. And it helps to have others around you who are going through the same thing. That's why soon I'll be hosting a leadership development group program where you can work on things like this with me and others who want to be on top of the new leadership wave, because it's coming. Keep listening, and I'll keep you posted on that. If you like this podcast, click like and subscribe. Let me know what the subject makes you think about and what you want to talk about next. This is Luci Gabel. Talk to you next time.